great.
Good. Thank you so much for being here. This is important for us, and my prayer is that it's going to be helpful for you. We always are. The mission of helping seniors is to give us information that's going to help us, as Joe Steckler, our president and founder, talked about. He calls it making an aging plan, and so that's a good part of an aging plan. I'll get to that in a minute. That's a helping seniors fundraiser cruise. But Joe talks about making an aging plan, and what he means by that is we live in Florida, so we get hurricane plans. We understand we don't want a hurricane, but if they tell us one is bearing down on us, then we know what we're going to do, how we're going to prepare, where we might go, what we might have to do if we're forced to make a change to what we would prefer to do. And that's kind of what Joe's point is about an aging plan. We can surely understand that there's certain things that come up along the way that might impact what our regular plans are. And all you have to do is look around and just pay attention, because we see stuff happen all the time. When Nancy or Karen gets those calls on the Helping Seniors info line, you'll see so often that somebody has just arrived on a crisis. And you know, when you arrive on a crisis, you have to get through it. You don't really have a choice. You just have to find a way through. But the problem is, you can ask any of the people that we partner with in the Helping Seniors world, they say when you're under time pressure, you're not at your best to make good decisions, number one. Number two, you may not have all the facts at your disposal to make the best decision. And number three, you certainly aren't going to be able to choose the optimal solution, right? Because usually if you're in a crisis, your options get narrowed pretty seriously. I was on the radio, Carlos Cuesta from Synergy Home Care was my guest yesterday, and we were talking about this. He said, you know, have you ever noticed, like, if you get in a car and you're driving the freeway and you have plenty of time, you know, you're trying to get to your destination, there's plenty of time, you've allowed lots of time, every traffic light is green, there's no tie-ups on any of the intersections or anything, it just goes smooth. And what happens is, you know, because I know this happens to me a lot, if I don't plan ahead, I get in the car, and of course, every traffic light's going to be red, and there's going to be some, you know, tie up on a freeway or something between here and there. It just seems to, you know, Murphy's Law or whatever they call it. So my point is, when we can get ahead of the aging curve, which is what Joe talks about, there are certain things that you can make a plan for. And so our whole reason to be as Helping Seniors is, number one, is to do our best to help people when they are in those challenging moments. But really what we've also learned is you can do so much better if you just get ahead of the curve and figure out what's the things that are going to make the most difference. So we've talked about this. We call it getting your ducks in a row. And in fact, I got to share this. Can you hand me the get your ducks in a row thing right there? This is from our good friends here, because we were talking about this. You know how everybody says, let's get your ducks in a row. That's our euphemistic kind of fun way to say, let's make an aging plan. And as we've gone through this, can I hand this back to you? As we've gone through this, we've come up with a couple of corollaries.
Yeah, but we want to thank the Silverhorns for this.
Yeah, that was a gift to us.
Silverhorns, raise your hand.
Thank you. So there's a couple of corollaries that go with get your ducks in a row. Number one is we are really blessed to live in Florida. Why are we here? Because we are in February, and look at the weather. This is why we're in Florida, right? But one of the real advantages of living here on the Space Coast, Brevard County, is that there are so many good resources to help you do things. And so one of the things that we've learned quickly is you don't have to try this on your own. You have to know who the right resources are for the right situation. How many times have you ever run into something, maybe it's a home repair, and say, I need to call so-and-so because they might know the right person to call about this. That's what Helping Seniors has tried to do now for 13 years with our Senior Information Helpline, is make sure that we're those folks you can call. And I really hope and pray that we're able to direct you in a way that makes a difference. So the other thing is, a lot of people, we think we're smart, right? So we know how to go online, do online searches and things like that. We'll run into a situation and we'll start to try to figure this out on our own. But how many know that you can get into a Google search or something and end up more confused? You know, you're trying to, and then you're not sure what, you know, because you know the old saying, if it's on the internet, it has to be true, right? So, but in the middle of all that, now you're trying to figure out what is correct, what's not, is this for my state? because a lot of times, you'll see an ad on TV. It says, you can do your own legal forms at home. It's simple. But then you find out, no, it's got to be for this state. And there's all these things that make it real complicated. There's so much good help available. And that's one of the reasons we exist, is to try to get everybody together who is good help for seniors. And let's work that way. The second corollary, and we added, so we say be wise like an owl, just keeping with the whole barnyard theme of ducks in a row and all that. So the third thing that we've added this year as kind of a sub-theme is don't be an ostrich. And so the very fact that you're here today means you're not an ostrich, okay? Because you are actually taking steps now to think about things that you might run into as we go in the future. So when we had the opportunity to have this space donated for helping seniors and create Joe's Senior Resource Center Brevard, one of our missions is to create ongoing monthly education like this fourth Thursday of each month. Is going to be a time for wellness. So we want, because we think that's step number one on your aging plan. If you have your health, you can solve almost any other problem, right? So we got to do everything we can to keep our health at the best way that we can. So the wellness series, fourth Thursday of every month. Thank you for being here for that. And I want to explain that there's some great series coming up. This month it's Heart Health Month, so we're going to have a great talk about that this morning. But the second thing I want to remind you is in March, the program is called No Broken Bones About It, and so that's going to be with our friends Jeetal Patel with Coastal Occupational Therapy and Susan House, and they're going to be here and they're going to share with you what occupational therapy and some tips and ideas to maximize your balance, but also to prevent falls. And how many know that's one of those crisis situations? Somebody can have a bad fall, and then all of a sudden everything has to change as a result of that. So we want to keep you safe, and that's what the conversation is going to be, including balance and falls test. They have like a little evaluation and thing, and it's going to be at the tail end of the meeting next month. So make sure you put that fourth Thursday of the month. Then looking ahead in April, wave your hand, Dr. Cressida. She is retired pharmacist, and one of the things, how many have ever been to, like you go to your doctor, the doctor sends you to a specialist, the specialist sends you home with another prescription, but does your first doctor know that, and does your second doctor know the medicines that you're on? And so there's a thing called polypharmacy. Am I saying that right? And so oftentimes it's your pharmacist, when you go in and hand in the prescription, they go, uh-oh, you're taking this, does this really work with that? So she's going to talk to us about this, what it's called medical pharmaceutical therapy. Is that?
Medication therapy management.
Okay, so she's going to be our speaker in April and going to teach us about that. But also we're going to invite you to bring in your prescription list and see, and she as a pharmacist, a licensed pharmacist, can look through and see like, are any medicines fighting each other? I sit on a group called the Brevard Commission on Aging, and Dr. Potomsky is the chairperson of that entire group, and he talks a lot about this whole issue of polypharmacy. He says because a lot of times doctors will have a tendency to write a prescription to chase a symptom from a prescription they gave you the month or two before. So whereas if there's time and ability to really look at it, maybe you can unwind and figure out, are you just chasing a symptom, or is this medication really necessary? So those are the kind of things that are coming up on the wellness series. We're also going to be adding, it's probably going to start in April, but we're going to be adding a third Thursday feature, which is going to be specifically aging plan delivered. So we're going to try to keep everything about wellness on this fourth Thursday, but we're going to add a third Thursday. And this is going to be where you would hear from like attorneys, financial planners. You might hear from people who are experts at assisted living. You'll hear a lot of things so that you can think about different options that you want to consider as you make your own aging plan. So that's a little bit about where we headed. This is a little bit of the commercial. So we are going sailing. We're going to go sailing. This is our fourth annual Helping Seniors Foundation Cruise. And there's a gentleman, his name is Chris Morse. He and his wife are board certified travel specialists. And what they do is they work very carefully to make sure it's safe for seniors to travel. So a couple of years, actually now, I guess if this is our fourth, it's been several years ago, they came to us with the idea of putting together a Helping Seniors Foundation cruise, which is a fundraiser for our little charity. And so we're going to go sailing June 9th right here from Port Canaveral. We end up having like 150 people locally. It's a great fun time on MSC Cruises. We're going to be on their beautiful ship, the Seashore. We sail out to Ocean Cay, which is a beautiful marine preserve, and then we sail over to Mexico and catch Cozumel, Costa Maya. But the fun thing is you get to be on a ship with lots of people who are local, because you always end up making friends with people on the ship. And normally everybody goes back, they go back to Spokane and you guys stay in touch by Facebook or something like that. Here, you can stay in touch by, say, let's have lunch next week. So it's really a fun thing. It's a nice thing. And it's a fundraiser. So what happens is he puts everything together so it's like one package price. Everything's included. It's a great deal. And it includes everything. So when you pay for it, you paid for the cruise, you paid for all the taxes and fees, you actually prepaid your gratuities, because otherwise, they tack that onto your bill at the end of the cruise. He puts in the Wi-Fi package so you can stay connected to people back home. They put in the drink package, so people who want to have something beyond iced tea can pretty much have their pick. So all's included, and then because he negotiates it as a group, it becomes a very good price. And this time we're trying it in the summer so that you could invite your kids and grandkids to come with you. And as you know, on a cruise ship, what's wonderful is there's stuff for everybody to do. And so everybody can split up and do what they want to do during the day, come back for dinner and such like that. So it's going to be a fun time.
Insurance is included too, Terry.
Oh, thank you. That's a good point. The travel insurance is included too. And one of the best things that I like to point out is, the very first time we did this, we had a single lady who was 93 traveling by herself in the Helping Seniors group. But here's the point. She wasn't by herself, right? Because first of all, she's with the whole group, but then your travel agent is right there with you on board. So stuff can happen. I mean, and you need to ask somebody. And so now you don't have to stand in the front, in that front of that line that always like 25, 30 people, gets longer if you go stand in it. You have somebody who can go straight to the top and try to straighten it out, whatever it is. So again, this 93-year-old lady wasn't sailing by herself. She was with a group. And again, they're special needs certified. So if there are extra things like diabetic or need supplemental oxygen or things like that, they know and are comfortable with how to work with that. Finally, nobody hassles you on the cruise ship and says, oh, you got to donate to Helping Seniors, because that is actually built into the package. So what happens is, MSC Cruises turns around and writes a check back to the Helping Seniors organization, and that goes straight into our foundation fund, which is the area that we're able to, we can't do much because it's small, but we're hoping to grow it over time. But this is when somebody calls us and there's actually something that we have to do for folks. Like, we've come up with, we've been trying to help certain situations where we can with direct help, and that's the purpose of the foundation. Joe was able to build this in Brevard Alzheimer's. He built up a $3 million endowment. So one of the reasons that Joe's clubs and things work well today is because he set that up so they would be on a solid financial footing. So that's what that's about. The next thing is, this is our other big fundraiser, and it's just cranking up. And you are invited to come back here if you can Saturday morning. And I'll tell you why, because we're going to do an open house here in the lobby and a big car show out in the parking lot, because on Saturday, there's nobody has medical appointments or things like that. So we get to take over the parking lot. When we did this in September, we had like 150 cars out there. It was just fun to walk through them. And this time there are 6 cars in the Helping Seniors car raffle that you get to choose from when you win. So we're going to actually have all 6 cars out. We're going to film some promotional stuff with them. They're going to have a big open house up here. It's 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. here, so just drop in. You're just welcome to pop by. So that's what's going on with that. So those are actually the 6 cars that you can choose from. They all come from AJ Hire's car dealership. They are, AJ has been friends with Joe Steckler, our president founder. They've been talking about that they've given away cars together going back into the 90s. And Joe said that's partially how he got the Joe's Clubs built, because people would participate, they would donate. It's a fun way for them to donate to the charity. And then somebody goes home in a new car, and everybody has a nice time because we have a big grand drawing event out at the American Muscle Car Museum. So the cars you can pick from this year There's a Jeep Compass Sport, so if you're adventurous, that's there. There's actually a mid-size pickup truck, the Chevrolet Colorado. There's a Mitsubishi Outlander, which is the car that our winner picked last year. Diane Pelak, when they said, which car do you want to drive home in? She said, I want the Mitsubishi, so that's what she's driving. There's a Mazda 3 sedan. It's kind of elegant. There's a sporty car, the Dodge Hornet, and then there is the Kia Sportage, which is, we gave away one of those, I think it was 2 years ago. We gave away to David Odahowski, who was our winner. I think it was 20, or are we not, 24? It must have been 21. So it's a great way. You get a ticket, and you can do it anytime between now and the drawing. They look like this, one for $25, five for a $100 donation. Get them anytime you like, including today. So with that, what I'd like to do is keep us moving on the actual program for today. So this is just, I wanted to mention this real quickly. If you have any friends or know anybody in the city of Palm Bay, we do a program called the Palm Bay 55 Plus Renters Workshop, which is, this is a program that is designed to help people who are what's called housing insecure. So we do a thing called Breakfast with the Attorney. The next one is going to be March 16th, but specifically this is done with City of Palm Bay funds and CDBG funds. So we're able to do what we call Breakfast with the Attorney. He goes through what's called the Florida Bar Eviction Prevention Program. And what it's designed to do is to educate people on what your rights as a renter are. Because we get a lot of calls from people who are getting displaced because they've faithfully paid their rent for years and years and years. There's been some change in ownership, and all of a sudden, the new person that owns it is saying you got to pay like double the rent. So this is a good lesson on what is legal, what's allowable, what do you do if you're having a problem with your landlord, those kind of things. People who've been through this program really speak highly of it. So the next one is March 16th. It's a breakfast at Mima's Barbecue. If you're interested, just let us know and we'll talk. We can talk more about that. So with that, let's move into HeartSmart. And I want to bring up a great friend of the Helping Seniors organization. I'm always going to get this right. Come on up, Tami Leeberg. Round of applause for Tami Leeberg. We did like a little zip through this so I can, because I think we tried to put up a picture in case you can't recognize her standing in front of you. Oh, how is that good? Is that good? All right. One of those in the file, but so what I love about Tami and her company, Practitioners in Motion, is they go to you, and we could spend the rest of the time here just talking about the benefit, because I don't know if you ever go to a doctor's office, and I mean a good doctor's office, you're still lucky to have like 8 minutes with the actual doctor, right? Because everybody comes in, they ask you your medications, they ask you what's changed, they try to write all this stuff down, they're trying to help the doctor, but the time that you have with the doctor is like this much. And then the other problem is, I was laughing because I was telling Tami this story. When we were caregivers for our moms, they would complain at home all week. Like, I feel terrible. This is awful. I've got this pain. I've got this. And then the morning that we go to the doctor's office, everybody's showered. They're looking good. We get in the car. We get there. Doc walks in. How you doing? I'm fine. And so one of the cool things is because they work, they go to where you are. And so because of that, it puts, first of all, the person's more at ease because they're in their home environment. And then also it gives the practitioners an opportunity to see what's really a better overall sense of what's going on. So when it came up for HeartSmart, I said, this is the perfect thing if you would come and help us and lead us through and learn things that we need to know. Because again, job number one on the aging plan is let's stay healthy. So with that, can I turn it over to you? Thank you, Tami.
I'm going to bring him everywhere I go. That was an awesome intro. So as he said, my name is Tami Leeberg. I'm a co-owner of Practitioners in Motion. My sister and I opened the company up 9 years next month. So she was a provider with Health First, and I actually had a practice in Indiana, and I moved back. And we decided to open it up because both of us were doing regular office, seeing patients in the office, and the companies were wanting us to, see our patients very quickly for one thing. So if you came in just for, a cough, but say your arthritis is flared up that day, they wanted us to have you schedule another appointment for the arthritis pain. And we were like, we can't do that with our geriatric population. You know, most of us after a certain age have more than one thing going on. And even if you're healthy, you still need to make sure you get your routine labs done and things like that, because to stay healthy the longest is preventative medicine. And so we both opened that up. It started with me and her. We're both board certified adult and geriatrician nurse practitioners. We are autonomous, and that confuses a lot of people. So we don't have a physician that we have to work under. We're by ourselves. It started out with me and her and our MA. And our MA's Gidget, she's been with us, she's worked with Christy somewhere since like 1999. So when we broke off, she came with us. We're up to 10 providers now, and we have an office staff of 5. My nurse is Jean. She's over there. Anybody that wants their blood pressure checked today, she'll be more than happy to do that for you when we're all done here. So Kerry what we do is we go to assisted livings and private homes. And independent living communities. We see all of our patients once a month. It's called chronic care management, whether you're sick or healthy. So we come to you, we do an assessment, we chit chat. As Kerry pointed out, it gives us a clearer view of what's going on. We've gone to many homes before, and they didn't have food in the refrigerator, or as soon as you walk in, it's like, well, we've got to do a urine sample because obviously there's something going on here that, and you don't get that in the office. Like Kerry said, everybody that comes in, all of a sudden they're fine. It's a good day and everything's okay. So it gives us a real basis of how people are actually living. A lot of people, as they get older, I've had patients that have chosen to buy food for their animal, and they're losing weight, and it's like, why are you losing weight? She actually was sharing cat food with her cat because that's all she could afford. So then that way we can get social services involved and other resources, when they need it, and they're not going to tell you that when they come into the office. So we go out from Brevard County, and we're down into Indian River County now also. We see about 92 facilities and then a lot of private homes now. So that's what our company does. What he asked me to do, by trade, I'm an ER and a cardiovascular ICU nurse. So I did that for 23 years before I went back out and got my provider's license. So he asked me to talk to you about heart health, February being Heart Health Month. So I was going to talk to you all about high blood pressure, because that's something that over time the majority of people end up having issues with. And then at the end, we'll just do a question and answer, if that's okay with y'all. So there's 3 stages of blood pressures. Well, let me go back. So blood pressure, a lot of people think, oh, well, they only worry about the top number. So, oh, my blood pressure is good, it's 130. So there's 2 ways of measuring that. So the blood pressure is the amount of force it takes for your heart to pump, and the resistance it gets in the arteries when it is pumping. So you've got 2 numbers. Your top number is going to be your systolic number, and that is when your bottom chamber of your heart is actually pumping out the blood. That's the number that we're looking at. The bottom number is called the diastolic number. That number is actually extremely important also, because that's when your heart is actually at rest. So if your numbers are running, high 80s, 90s or worse, when your heart is at rest, you can just imagine what it's trying to do when it's trying to pump that. So the 2 things that, there are 3 stages. A lot of times you'll get your doctor's note and it'll say like stage 3B. And so we'll have a lot of patients say, well, what does that mean? It says high blood pressure, stage 3B. So there's actually 3 stages. The first stage is anything that's consistently, the top number is 130 to 139. And that's a new range. The newest research just came out. Everybody used to think it was like 120 over 70s. That was the golden number. So they've raised that somewhat. So now it's 130 to 139. Bottom number being 80 to 89. And again, this is consistent. So if you're not feeling well or you're in pain, your number may be higher, but it's going to be, you need to trend those out. So it's a consistent number. So like when I get a new patient, when they're first admitted to me, I will have the nurses or the staff there do blood pressures once or twice a day, depending on the patient, for 2 weeks. That way, when I go back, that I can see what it is doing over a 2-week period, and that way we can titrate medicine or start them if needed. The second stage is a consistent pressure of 140 over 90s, and then you have what's called a hypertensive crisis. That's anything that exceeds 180 over 120. Again, if your numbers are that high, you need to wait, drink some water, be calm, sit down, check it again in 5 minutes. If you're still running that high, it's an emergency. You need to go to the emergency department. And then the other thing too is you want to take your blood pressure at the same time of the day. If you're on blood pressure medicine, some people take it once a day. If you take blood pressure again in the evening, you don't have to do it routinely, but several times a month, you're going to want to check that nighttime pressure too, just to make sure that you're staying consistent throughout the day. Obviously, if you have anything that is chest pain, jaw or neck pain, back pain, especially for females, or if you are extremely fatigued for several days in a row, like an abnormal amount of tiredness, those are things that need to be checked out right away. Chest pain, shortness of breath, anything like that, that's an emergency visit also. So a lot of females have different symptoms when it comes to having any kind of cardiac issues. We have can have nausea. We have more pain in our backs usually than the typical jaw and neck pain that you hear about on shows and TVs. So anything that's abnormal, especially a lot of people will think, oh, it's just heartburn, especially ladies. That heartburn is a sign that you need to have your doctor check you out for things. And you have to remember too, one of the things is when you go in for a routine exam, like when your doctor's doing routine blood work, I've heard a lot of people say, well, how could it be my heart? I was just checked out last month and I was told it was fine. When we do routine lab work and things, we're checking your blood count, your electrolytes, your kidneys, your liver. We're not doing a cardiac workup. That's going to be a separate kind of a workup. And anyone that starts to have any kind of heart disease needs, even if you see your primary monthly like ours, we collaborate with cardiologists a lot, and we make sure that you're seeing them at least twice a year if you have any kind of heart issues. So I've had patients come to me, it's like, oh yeah, I had a stent put in 5 years ago and have never been back to see their heart doctor because everything's been okay. So those checkups need to be followed up on if you have any kind of cardiovascular issues. The causes of blood pressure, again, is about the force up in the arteries. So there's primary hypertension, which usually develops over time, many years. There's plaque that builds up in your arteries become harder. So it's just like, if you think of a hose, when you try to get the water through it, if you have a really stiff hose, that pressure is going to come out harder. That's the same thing with your blood pressure. If you have a more limber, pliable hose, the water easier trickle. That's kind of how to think of it as it's going through your body. And then there's secondary hypertension, which is caused by other underlying conditions like that. Let's see, it can also be from cold medicines. That's one thing, especially if you're on blood pressure medications, which I'm sure our pharmacist will talk about with hers. The polypharmacy thing is very real. So, and everybody thinks, oh, it's over the counter. That doesn't mean that it's safe for everybody. So that's one thing you want to make sure if you're on blood pressure medicine or have issues that you're taking that medication, the cold medicine that's made for blood pressure patients, because that is out there. You don't want a regular cold medicine or like Sudafed. Anything that's going to raise that, you don't want to add to that with over-the-counter medications. Risk factors for blood pressure is age, obviously, race, any family history, obesity, being overweight, and that can just be even like 15 pounds overweight. That's going to, the more, again, difficult it is for you to pump that blood through your body, then the higher your blood pressure can be. And just losing 10 or 15 pounds can make a tremendous effect on your blood pressure and your cardiovascular status overall. The other things I'm just going to go through and then I'll go back and talk about, but it's lack of exercise, any kind of tobacco use or vaping, too much salt, low potassium levels, which is another reason we always check electrolytes every 3 months, because those things could definitely affect blood pressure overall. Drinking too much alcohol, high stress levels, and then other conditions like we talked about, kidney disease, diabetes, and sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is one of the other things I want to touch on quickly, because that's very underdiagnosed, and it can play a huge factor in your overall health, your fatigue, your blood pressure, swelling in your legs. There's many factors that sleep apnea can affect, and they do have a lot of newer, in the last decade, treatments for that can help you, and you would be amazed how better you will feel if you get that treated. And a pulmonologist can do that, so your doctor can refer you out to a pulmonologist and get that testing done. So if you have any kind of, if your partner tells you, oh, you know, you stop breathing in the middle of the night, or you do one of the really bad snoring things like that, those are reasons to get checked out to see if you have sleep apnea. Getting enough exercise. That's the one word that most of us don't want to hear, me included. So they say that 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise per week, which is 20 to 30 minutes per day, will help maintain an overall health. It will help decrease your cortisol levels, which decreases the stress that your body has on it. Some days I can't get 5 minutes to do like an aerobic exercise. So what I always, and as we get older, our arthritis hurts, our joints hurt, it's harder to get out and move about. But if you do 5 or 10 minutes of just walking, which is a simple thing to do most of the time, even if you're using your walker or whatnot, if you get out, even if it's around your house, or if you can get out to the mall. Most of my patients have a very difficult time getting in and out of vehicles and things. I do a lot of memory care dementia patients, but we still need to get them out and walk them around their facility and get them moving. And if you do that 5 or 10 minutes, 3 or 4 times throughout the day instead of all at once, that's going to give you the same amount of benefit as if you're out on a treadmill for 30 minutes at a time. So when you think about exercise, you don't have to think about actually lifting weights or breaking that sweat. Just getting up and moving for that 20 to 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, is going to be hugely beneficial for you. And then that will let you know that when Jeetal is here next month with Coastal Occupational Therapy, we use her a lot. She does Part B, outpatient therapies, and she's phenomenal. I've even sent her to my dad. That's how much I trust her. So if you can make her talk next month, please come back and do that. So, and she'll go over all kind of different exercises with you that you can do in a seated chair that's going to give you a benefit for your overall health. And then obviously if you smoke, you should stop. That does cause the arteries to narrow. It does cause the wall of the arteries to stiffen over time. So, and even if you've smoked I had one guy say, well, I've smoked for 40 years, there's no reason to quit now. That isn't true. If you stop, the benefits will kick in over time. So, obviously eating good foods. This handout also I've made copies for is back on our table, so I'm not going to sit here and read all the foods off to you, but there are foods that can help naturally lower blood pressure and help the pliability of your arteries improve. And then, let's see what else. Okay. So I wanted to go over also, if you have a condition called atrial fib, which is an irregular heartbeat, a lot of times your doctor will say, take your blood pressure once a day, go get a cuff and just do it at home. If you have atrial fib, the cuff monitors that they sell, those are not accurate if you have an irregular heartbeat. They're either going to read too high or too low, or they're going to pick up extra beats or not pick up enough beats, just because they're not made to, even with all the smart technology we have, they're not made to catch that. So if you have atrial fib or any kind of irregular heartbeat arrhythmia, you'll need to get an arm cuff that comes at the top. And when you do that, you want to make sure that your legs are uncrossed, you're at a seated position, and you don't move, because any little movement in those automatic cuffs will make it seem higher than it is, and it won't give you an accurate reading. So it's very important not to move around. Don't even talk while the machine's thinking. And that's going to give you your most accurate readings that way. Obviously, I've been a nurse forever, so old school. The very most accurate is a manual pressure. If you can, if you go into your doctor, or even I think urgent cares might do blood pressures for you. I'm not sure if they do that here. They did in Indiana, but if you can get someone to do a manual blood pressure on you, that's the most accurate way. But I know at home that's not feasible. So an arm cuff, they do cost a little bit more, but they are much more accurate than the wrist cuffs are. So, and I don't know if there was anything else you wanted me to touch on specifically. Let's see. Talked about that. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about blood pressure being high. What about low blood? How low should you get there? Have one that you should be concerned.
Thank you. That's an excellent point I should put into my notes for next time I talk. Pardon? Oh, she wanted to know, I talked a lot about high blood pressure, but what about low blood pressure, she's asking. So if you're having low blood pressure and you're on medication, obvious for high blood pressure, and again, this is something that happens a lot. So as a primary, I feel like and this is when I bring on new practitioners with our group, when I'm training, this is one of the things, I look at us like the cog in a wheel. So you've got your cardiologist out here, you might have a kidney doctor, you've got your pharmacy, you've got a lot of people on the outside. Your primary should be that cog. Now, a lot of times in an office, they don't have the time that we can have, not in an office, and I get that. But it really is their job. It is what they should be doing, is to check that med list every time you go into them. Take a med list with you and say, this is what I'm actually taking. Because a lot of times that heart doctor, they won't get that note, or they'll miss it. Or, the kidney doctor starts you on something and they won't. So to answer that in the long way, if you're on medication and you're running low, then that needs to be brought up to your primary right away and just say, I've been running low for the last so many days. I'm on this drug. What do you want me to do? And they're probably going to titrate you down. So, and my theory always is less is more. So I'll get patients that come from the hospital with 3 pages of meds, and the first thing I do is order lab work to check a baseline labs, and that second follow-up visit in a week, I usually start getting them off drugs. So, and they feel a lot better because, like Kerry had mentioned, you're on one drug for this, and then you have a side effect, so then you get another drug for the side effect, and then that has side effect. So everything you put into your body has a potential side effect. So you might be on 2 drugs at the same time that maybe they don't even know you're on, that's causing that. If you're not on medication for high blood pressure and you're still running low, one of the main reasons that we run low, especially as we get older, is that we're dehydrated. Most of us walk around in a dehydrated state when we're older, and they're no, I drink 2 glasses of water a day. The goal is whatever your weight is, half of that. So if you're 100 pounds, you would want to drink 50 ounces of water a day. So half your weight and that many ounces of water. Now, obviously, if you have congestive heart failure or a kidney issue where you're on a limited amount, that's going to make a difference. But the number one cause of low blood pressure in adults is dehydration.
Is there a number that you should be concerned about?
Well, so if you're not symptomatic and you run we like 100. Anything under 100, I start thinking, let's start checking things. So, and as far as the bottom number, it's usually good around 60 to 70. That's like the sweet spot, so to speak. So if you're running that, then those are okay. Any numbers under that, then you should start looking at and trending out. But if you're symptomatic, then you need to do something sooner than that. So, yes, sir.
Low salt in your diet and higher potassium. What can you eat for potassium?
There's several different foods. They are on the handout that'll talk about that. But bananas is the number one easiest thing you can eat that has a very high potassium rate. But again, those numbers for your sodium and your body needs salt. Sodium and potassium are the main electrolytes that kind of run everything in your system. So even though they say low sodium, you still do need salt in your diet, but a lot of times, especially if you have swelling in your legs, that's going to be one of the things they look at. But again, when they do your routine lab work, which should be done every 3 months, 6 if you're really healthy, there's a range there that we'll be looking at. There is a list of foods back there that'll be a high potassium that can tell you what to stay away from and what to eat too.
Potassium or too much salt, so I was wondering what raised your potassium.
What raises it? A lot of times potassium will be higher if you're having any kind of kidney issues, and then there's a lot of medications that can raise your potassium level. Doesn't matter what your diet is, so that's the reason those need checked. But yeah, but there is a list back there on that. So yes, sir.
If you're taking endopeptidase that's got high sodium, do you turn around and counteract it with potassium effect on it?
No.
Or just flush it out with extra water?
Water. Always water. The answer is always water. Drink as much water as you can tolerate. Yes, ma'am.
Your services cover insurance or does insurance cover it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. We do take most major insurances. Obviously, straight Medicare, there are some UHCs. What would happen is if you call our office, Gidget does all of our billing and things like that. She can run, well, any of the girls actually can run your insurance and tell you in a matter of minutes whether we accept it or not. But we do accept most major insurances. And we are the only mobile practitioner providers that accept Health First. So when Christy left Health First, that was part of our contract, is that we do take Health First insurance. Yes, ma'am.
Could you just restate the new levels?
Yeah, it's 130 to 139 for the top number for stage 1, and then consistently 140 over 90 for stage 2, and then they're broken out after that, but that's your basic numbers. And then anything over, I think it's 180 over 20, 120 is considered a hypertensive crisis. So between 140 over 90s up to 180 would be that 3A, and there's a 3B. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Oxygen levels.
Mm-hmm. Anything that that falls below 92% consistently needs to be looked at. Now, we use the finger monitors. I know they sell them everywhere, and you can check those. The thing with those, you have to those work by your heart rate. So again, if you have an irregular heart rate, that may not be accurate, or you may have to leave it on your finger a lot longer. It also may run low if you're wearing fingernail polish. It's difficult for it because it works on the capillaries, and that polish covers that. Or fake nails. Or if you're cold. If your fingers are cold, it definitely will not give you a correct reading. So if you're getting something low like that and you're like, I don't feel bad, I don't feel short of air, make sure your hands are warmed up and then let it sit there. A lot of people will put it on and be like, oh, it's 88. No, let it sit. It's got to get your heartbeat and has to think about it for a minute. So, but if you do all those things and you're still running under 92, it's a reason to be looked at. If you're in the 80s, you need to call your doctor and be seen. Yes, ma'am.
Blood pressure readings. The bottom number, which measures your pulse.
No, the bottom number. The third number. Yeah, that's your heart rate.
The heart rate is very low, and we learned he has pacemaker. But we can't rely on the readings on that. So what are we supposed to do?
You can't rely on the readings on.
The numbers could go very low, but the pacemaker is supposed to kick in and say, keep you at 60.
Correct.
So there's nothing we can monitor ourselves, just the pacemaker is.
If his pacer goes off, it's a pacer defibrillator. It's just a pacer. So, and it's a demand, so he's being paced all the time. All the time. Yeah, so it should not go below. If it is, you need your pacer checked. Do you have the telephone that you call in and have that checked? I'm sorry.
We have a device at the house that monitors it.
And then it feeds the recording back to your doctor? Okay. So they should be looking at that all the time. And if it's consistently, if your pacer is consistently not working, not pacing you at whatever that doctor has it set at, because they can set it at different rates. So if whatever your doctor has it set at, if you're consistently not running that, you're running lower than that, you need to see your cardiologist. Does that answer your question? Okay. But you also don't want to go off the pulse ox to check that, because it may not be picking it up correctly. So if you do have a monitor cuff, that's going to give you that third number. That's going to be more accurate than a pulse ox. Yeah.
I want to comment. I like what you're saying because doctors don't listen.
Some don't. Some practitioners don't either. It's you know, and just like in any kind of industry, you've got really good ones and really bad ones and a lot of in between. So.
Well, like she was commenting about my pacemaker, they took my blood pressure 3 times. They said, your heart is not beating. You're only beating 28, 30, and 32 beats a minute. I said, no, I've got a pacemaker. It's set at 61. So she says, well, I'm going to rush you to the hospital. I said, I'm not going to the hospital. I went home. It was nothing wrong with my heart. It was her instrumentation. I worked in a laboratory, so I am familiar with ISO standards in laboratories. But I'm not so sure that the medical facilities have to use ISO standards, or if they even have their equipment calibrated. So I'm not comfortable when I go in, they put a cup on me, got an instrument up there, and it pops up, oh, you're only beating at 30 beats a minute. When was the last time that was calibrated?
I can tell you that they're not. Yeah, they're not. Not in offices. You know, if you go into the hospital, obviously that's different, as I'm sure you're aware, but in the offices, they're not. And here again, this is showing how long I've been a nurse, but if that's the case, you know, and especially as an ER nurse, because, you know, we have monitors on everybody, you don't treat the monitor. You don't treat the instrumentation. You treat the patient. So if her monitor, whatever it is she was using, is showing you at 28 or 30, did she listen to you with the stethoscope?
That's what she had. She said she says, she says it has a amplifier in it.
Oh, she's got the digital kind? Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
it could have been digital on the beats. I mean, it was larger than the regular one.
Yeah.
And she says, you're only beating at 28, 30, and 32 beats.
Again, that's the machine, so yeah. So all I would do, I can't, you know, speak for somebody else, obviously, but what I would do in that case, or what I've done in that case, you just put your stethoscope, the old kind, not the kind that's digital, but the old kind, and you count it. And then that's going to give you a regular, a correct heartbeat number. So, and at 28, you're going to be symptomatic also, other than just the rate. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about heart murmurs.
About heart murmurs. The heart murmurs, so you've got valves, 3 valves in your heart, and each one of those, if it starts to get, I'm being cut off. No, you're okay. Each one of those has for better words, it's a flap. So when your blood goes through it, it opens, blood goes through, stops, and it stops. When you have a heart murmur, one of those leaflets gets loose. So then the blood doesn't just go through and stop, it comes back up. So some heart murmurs are, you can have one, you'll never know it, you'll never have symptoms, you'll never need anything. Other murmurs start backflowing so much that you end up getting congestive heart failure or pulmonary hypertension, things like that. So some need treated, some don't. If they get bad enough where you need a valve replacement, then, but it depends which valve it is also. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Tami, I bet we could stay here all day with you. I bet we could. Yeah. So thank you, Tami. A big round of applause for Tami.
I don't know about you, but I learned a lot. Was that good? That was good. And a couple of questions I'm going to ask Tami about afterwards. You know, we see these commercials all the time on TV that says, oh, you can check your heart with the little thing. Do you like those? Not like those? No, these are supposedly, you know, you. Yeah, $99. Put your finger on this. Hang on, come up, because this was one I was personally curious about. I see the ads. I go, is it real? Is it useful? What is it?
Yeah, they do an EKG machine off of your finger or something. I've used a few of those. They've come up okay. But if it comes up that you have an irregular heart rate, or if it says you have AFib, I mean, the only way to truly know if you have an arrhythmia that lasts is to do a lot of measurements off a 12-lead EKG. So that might give you a quick, this might be wrong with you, and you could go to get it checked out, but I wouldn't count on it being completely accurate either. So it is only $79, but or if it tells you, oh, you're in VTAC, and it's like, okay, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to run to the hospital? So, and again, I'm an old ER nurse, so I'm a bit prejudiced that you need a full 12 lead to diagnose anything like that. So.
Oh, one more question.
How many of those have you come across in that?
Oh, how many patients?
How many individuals?
None. I have a few providers that have one, and we go out because, you know, that'll give us a baseline. But I mean, as long as, like, I can listen to you and know if you're in AFib or not. I can listen to you and know if you're having, you know, if you're throwing either a PAC or PVC, which is just an irregular heartbeat that we can all get from drinking too much caffeine or something. So I have a few providers that carry them just in case. I haven't had any patients that have had.
Like the initial phase, so they got to turn around and improve the bugs or so that are coming along. That it's only been.
I wouldn't tell anyone that doesn't know how to actually read an EKG to waste your money on it. My opinion only.
If I missed that, I'm sorry. How about smartwatches? How accurate is smartwatch?
No. Just no. No.
It tells me I'm in AFib, I'm not in AFib.
So, possibly. I mean, I honestly, I have not done any research myself on those, so I can't give you my gut is saying it's a machine, just like the wrist cuffs. If a wrist cuff can't pick it up, how's a watch doing it? But I would say no. I would say see your doctor regularly.
We're back to don't try this on your own, right, folks? All right. So with that, I do want to wrap up. I want to make sure that you guys know they are equipped to do blood pressure checks back at the Practitioners in Motion table. I was asking Tami, I said, and we were talking about this before, I said, particularly if your doctor asks you to go home and do this, I said, maybe you can share some tips to make sure that we're doing it the right way, you know, like how often we're supposed to do it and things like that. I've seen people who get hyper and like every 5 minutes they're checking their blood pressure. I don't know. I would assume you could oversample, right? So please visit them. All of our good friends around the room make this possible. There is still plenty of stuff to snack on. By all means, help yourself. Thank you guys for being here. We're so appreciative. And we will see you next month. And hopefully we'll see you when? Saturday morning for fun. They're going to, may not be heart healthy, but they're telling us we have coffee and donuts and stuff. Is that okay? Like one day or something? One day. Okay. You heard it, right? 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. right back here. Thanks, guys.